Good night and thank you for joining me for yet another edition of In Touch. I want to start off by apologizing for the late start, but we are here and as promised there will be an interesting discussion from now until about 10:30. We will be discussing tourism. Tourism has been described in so many ways, the main economic driver, the lifeline of St. Lucia. Many persons still are not very comfortable with tourism being that main arm of our economy. Many persons are calling for greater focus to be in other areas such as agriculture, health, sports, and so many other areas. But we really cannot deny the place of tourism, especially in the current context. We are in a very difficult environment. We are basically in an environment where any good news would give us a reason to smile and to celebrate. And so last week, when the St. Lucia Tourist Board announced that we are set for yet another record-breaking year in tourism, I am sure that many St. Lucians smiled. I noticed too that some questions were asked. As usual, there are some persons who want to know how. Many persons are questioning the figures, as was done last year when the St. Lucia Tourist Board announced that we had recorded a 6% increase over the previous year, which was well above the projections of the St. Lucia Tourist Board. Tonight we have in studio Mr. Louis Lewis, no stranger to you. Of course, he's the Director of Tourism at the St. Lucia Tourist Board. He has been on the show before, and I believe you're the only person who has been on this show twice. So good night and welcome to In Touch.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And if you are here twice, then you know that there is good news. And not just that there is good news, but there are issues worth discussing and issues worth explaining to the people. I want to start off with the figures. Extremely good news. And many St. Lucians are excited to hear that we are on a trend. We are continuing the trend of growth. And we just last week on the 10th of March, the St. Lucia Tourist Board indicated that the first month was a record-breaking month, and also information gathered on February is very impressive, and that the St. Lucia Tourist Board looks forward to an interesting and exciting year. Tell us a little bit about our performance last year, because that would be the basis upon which we would be comparing our current performance.
Yes, okay. Well, last year, when we look at it from the perspective of the overall arrivals, we had a 6.1% increase. And that was coming against a projection of a 5% increase that we had forecasted from the start of the year. What we have been doing over the past few years is really sharpening the whole marketing focus. And we've done some things, and maybe I can go into some of that detail,
Sure.
to give an understanding of how we come up with the strategy, and why we are so successful. Our largest market, the US, has actually been the star performer. It's the one that is growing fastest. Not only are we getting increases in arrivals, but we are also seeing the average daily rates that the hotels have been able to charge increasing in tandem with that growth. So, for instance, when you see the US market has climbed by about 11%, the revenue from that market would have grown even at a faster rate than 11%. So, estimate would be anywhere in the region of about 14 to 15%. So it's growth being fueled by growth. And let me give you some snippets of the strategy. It's a whole comprehensive approach that we've taken towards marketing the destination. In the past 3 years, we've taken a very close look at what the competitors are doing. And it's really, the digital platform allows you a lot of latitude, a lot of things that you could not have done maybe just 5 years ago, that we can actually sharpen now. So, for instance, we look at the conversations that are taking place on the web, and it's done purely, by research with regard to people making decisions about destinations. So we look at the global discussion that is taking place on our profile, which is St. Lucia's profile. So you see things like vacation, holiday, Caribbean. We look at areas like the hashtags that are used in conversations about the destination. We look at things like emotional words that are, as part of the conversations, the attributes of the destination, the behaviors, that are featured in that sort of dialogue. And we develop a profile of what is St. Lucia's unique position. And these are the strengths to which we play. For instance, it's people looking for a destination reflecting that sort of language or these sort of attributes, you put a cookie on them and you follow them along the web for a long time. So in all places where they go, we have pop-up ads on St. Lucia, so it just keeps on, bringing up reminders of the destination. That is really playing to the consumer advertisements. And if you had to replicate that in other media, it would be very expensive.
Yes, yes.
Now, not only have we done that for St. Lucia for the destination, we've also developed a marketing plan for Antigua and Barbados and Jamaica and Aruba, who are our competitors.
Main competitors, yeah.
And we apply that same strategy, but diverting the attention and the traffic to St. Lucia. So that while we play to our strengths, we play to the strengths of all the competitors, and that's why you get that increased attention on the destination. The good fortune for us is that we have a very strong product, so that even if somebody is looking for a beach in Barbados, which is a destination that is more popular than us, when we provide the offering of St. Lucia, the comparison, is made, clearly. And St. Lucia has a wider variety of other areas that complement a vacation. So we become more attractive than, those sort of competing destinations. So that's happening across the platforms in terms of all these various areas. So brands, say for instance, in 2013 and in 2014 in particular, the most popular brand that has been sought after for people who are also looking for Caribbean destinations, just on the World Wide Web entirely, would be Tommy Bahama or something like this. So we buy that word or that name, through our adverts.
So once people search for this, then St. Lucia will pop up?
Yeah, so you search, you look for a tropical destination, St. Lucia will just pop up. And we'll keep reminding you that St. Lucia is available, St. Lucia is there, St. Lucia, has all of these things. And that is just a small component, of
but
the strategy.
a significant component, because
a very significant one.
Yes,
yeah.
Indeed. I want to speak about the cost of all of this, because yes, we are getting higher numbers, but I believe the average St. Lucian will want to know at what cost. Are we spending more on marketing, or are we spending just about the same and less? Because this is how we'll be able to measure the value for our dollar, basically. So you are, the SLTB is reporting, and we have seen that we are experiencing growth, not just in one area, stay over, but we notice the cruise passengers as well. And we're also reporting that visitor spending is up. But at what cost? How much is it costing us to get these people to come to St. Lucia? Okay,
well, every year in the development of the budget, we make sure that the marketing component is the most significant aspect of what we do. As a matter of fact, that is the mandate of the tourist board, to market the destination. So it speaks to the fact that, well, we ensure that marketing is the largest component of the budget. We've kept it at between 50 and 60% of the overall budget, and that reflects the level of activity. But in the marketing itself, there is a web approach. There is also the airlift strategy that we've implemented. And again, looking at what has made a number of destinations successful. If you look at the years, say 2005 up until now, a number of things are taking place with regard to safety and security, the willingness and the inability of people to travel, and what the competition is doing. Most of those competing destinations would have had direct access point to point. So you leave New York, you fly straight to Barbados. You leave, Atlanta, you fly straight to Jamaica. Incrementally and very, very deliberate, we have developed direct air service and access to St. Lucia from most of our major gateways, in the US. We've done the same thing in Canada, and of course, the UK is a little easier. So we've made sure that St. Lucia is available. As part of that complementary marketing strategy, we played to our strengths. What is St. Lucia best known for is the variety of soft adventure. It's also the weddings and honeymoons market, the romance market, collectively. And of course, the warmth for the people. That is exceptional in the context of what tourism destinations should have. And while we may have complaints and criticism about our people, we are still singled out for that exceptional hospitality.
But the complaints and criticism seem to be stronger among us as opposed to people interacting with us from the outside.
And sometimes the negatives are accentuated and the positives are sometimes silent. But the reality is that we have a very receptive population towards tourists and tourism. So that is a strength for us. And what happens when the people who have visited become marketing agents for the destination? We have a very strong rating, and we conduct surveys throughout the year, at least 6 times throughout the year, just to get a sense of how do we rank, how do people assess the destination, did we meet their expectations, the willingness to come back. And that is ranked on a percentage basis, and St. Lucia is, in terms of the willingness to recommend, is in the 90s consistently.
Wow.
It doesn't mean that we don't have issues. It also tells us that we have to stay at the top of our game, and we cannot allow the product to to depreciate, or we would suffer a challenge in being able to attract more people to the destination.
There are some who would say that the successes we are recording right now is as a direct result of contraction in the economies of our competitors, or perhaps some shortfalls in some of these other areas. So for example, they will say that it is not that someone really wanted to come to St. Lucia, but because an option was not available perhaps in Barbados or Antigua or some other competitor, then we just happen to be the beneficiary of the downfall of others. What would you say to that?
I would say it doesn't happen by magic. And if I may explore the logic or the lack of logic in that position, Barbados has additional capacity. They have the ability to host more people. They have many more rooms than we have. And if they are attracting less visitors than we are attracting, or if we are attracting at a faster rate than they are, it is not because they haven't got the capacity. I think what makes the critical difference is the strategies that we have employed to be able to attract more people to St. Lucia than we've been able to do in the past. The traveling public is much more discerning than it had been, in years gone by. What other competing countries have done in reaction to the downturn, they have sought to position and sell their destinations at discounts. We initially employed that strategy. It paid off for a very short time, but there comes a time when you have to deliver, and the traveling public is much more discerning. So you have to deliver on value for money. And your marketing message has to be very consistent with the service delivery that you have. Fortunately for us, ours is at a particularly high level, so that we can create that demand. The additional thing is that what allows you to stand out in the marketplace is the synergies between the expectation of the traveler and what you deliver. So, and let me explain. In the case of St. Lucia, every month during the course of the year, we have developed themes. Now, if you live in St. Lucia, you probably will not be aware of it. But say, for instance, October is the Chocolate Heritage Month. And what we have done is that we have capitalized on a number of attributes, and with regard to local chocolate and cocoa production in St. Lucia. And we've got a number of travel writers and even people who are in the culinary field to visit St. Lucia, have that experience, and write about it in their publications. And it gives you eyes and ears in places where ordinarily people would not have been expected to see St. Lucia feature. That creates a demand of itself and causes that flow of arrivals. Nobody travels from one place to the next to experience what they are familiar with. So that additional reason, to participate in what is arguably one of the top 5 brands of cocoa production in the world, to make your own chocolates, to have a chocolate experience, a chocolate spa, a chocolate wrap, a chocolate, something. And we have those products, visiting the farms, and there's a process, and we label it from bean to bar. And we allow people to experience the whole
Once
creation.
it ends at the bar, I know it will attract a lot of people.
No, it meant bean to bar being a bar of chocolate.
Oh, okay. I was wondering, because I'm like, when does the chocolate come into the drink? But October and chocolate, I'm thinking, when I think of October, I think of Creole Heritage. Do we tie in that cultural aspect to our marketing in any way?
So there's Creole Heritage Month as well. There's health and wellness. There's carnival. There's jazz. There's the culinary delights. Then there's St. Lucia Rocks. And all of these theme months. And there are a lot of articles, because at the end of the day, marketing is very scientific, and its success depends on its ability to reach that target audience. And one way of doing it is by repetition. Another way of doing it is by piquing your interest, you know, and creating that demand and the willingness to come. And we've also had we employed a strategy in the years gone by where we just got St. Lucia out in that mass market media. So people just became of that place called St. Lucia.
Okay.
And regardless of what your perspective is on shows like The Bachelor, but it has a very, very wide reach.
But how do we measure the successes of specific initiatives and strategies? Because we seem to be doing a lot at the same time, and it's understandable because you're dealing with a diverse market and you're trying to reach, you know, as many individuals as possible. But how do we measure the specific promotions and strategies so that we are able to determine the return on our investment?
Okay, so a case in point, if we are on a show like The Bachelor, the Bachelor show that has 2 of its episodes filmed in St. Lucia, you're out in that marketplace for an hour or 2 hours consistently. Compare that with a 30-second ad or a 40-second ad. How many times would you have to replicate that to be able to achieve the same? So, for instance, if you want to measure the impact of a show like The Bachelor, the first thing you look at is viewership. There are probably about 25 people logged in, you know, or watching it on TV. And of course, they're having images of St. Lucia, and you know, we make sure that they get the ideal spots, to get spots that display the topography, the warmth, you know, and all these sort of things. So it's interactive. You look at the circulation of magazines, for instance. If you have a writer covering any aspect, whether it be spas, and you know, St. Lucia has an extensive, you know, array of spas. In terms of on a volume basis, only the Dominican Republic has more than St. Lucia in the entire in the entire Caribbean. Yeah, so you know, it's one of our strengths as well. So when you get magazines that, you know, write on it, you look at the circulation, you look at the frequency of the publications and these sort of things, and you measure the add value. So for instance, if you have an article covering a page or 2, and you look at what it would cost you to place an ad in that magazine, and you have it as a result of you know, a story being written about.
So how do we track the response? Because we may cater to 1,000 people versus catering to 500 people, and of the 500, if 300 come, and of the 1,000 you have only 100 responding, then the other would be, you know, a more beneficial option. So how can we tell, or can we track which of the strategies attracted an individual, so we can know what worked, what doesn't work, and we can reposition? Yeah,
well, there are 2 ways into it. You measure it on the basis of the number of eyeballs that it attracts. So that's one. You get as a gross impression, right, in terms of circulation and readership and viewership and these sort of things. But on the other side, what we do is that we have a continuous assessment by interviewing visitors to the destination, and we ask them the specific question: how did you find out about St. Lucia? What were the influencing factors in your final decision to visit the destination? And they you know, they're willing to tell you, you know, how I chose it, why I chose it, what my options were, and you know, on the basis of that, you get a sense of what is working and what is not. With regard to the internet and the web, it's much easier to track. A lot of these magazines nowadays have an online version. And you know, it's easy to get a sense of what points of connectivity, because we monitor domains, you know, regularly, domains that were used before somebody comes onto our website, and that gives you a sense of what direction the business is coming from. And there are some campaigns that the returns are low, we just abandon it and move to the next one.
Okay, okay, indeed. And I noticed that the SLTB is focusing on a new strategy, and that is to use the diaspora, to use St. Lucians living abroad, to market St. Lucian, to connect the destination to tourists or to potential visitors. How did this idea come about? I must say that's a very controversial idea, because I've been reading some comments where individuals are actually accusing the SLTB of stealing their intellectual property and stealing their idea. So now that I mention it, perhaps we can talk about that too. But this idea, it's a very good idea. I'm wondering why we did not do this a very long time ago, because St. Lucians living abroad are basically the first ambassadors, and they are always willing and ready to sell their country.
Okay, well, let me start from a broad perspective.
Yes.
In our attempt to grow the visitor arrivals to St. Lucia, we are exploring every available option. Using the diaspora, I would have liked to take the compliment for it, but unfortunately, a number of countries have actually implemented similar programs. So it's not a
Oh, so it's not new.
it's not a novel or unique idea to St. Lucia. But having said so, how we have decided and designed the program is very specific and is very well. That in itself is unique. We have large pockets of St. Lucians living in major source markets. The St. Lucians cover a wide gamut of social strata, and there is a willingness to be participants in this whole effort to market the destination. And of course, we designed a program to embrace it. The whole idea is that we get people who are willing, we equip them with the marketing tools, we give them electronic brochures, we give them, make presentations available to them, and we developed online tools that allow them to direct their friends, relatives, or people that they're in contact with, to send them on, to the destination as an option, for vacations. We've launched that program in New York, in Atlanta, in the UK in particular. We are due also to launch in Washington DC, and also we've done a launch in Canada. And the whole idea is to just get as many solutions as are willing to participate, and
Do we have any targets in terms of what we're looking at, or when do we expect to begin to see some movement as a result of this initiative?
Okay, so we've done the launches at the end of February and also early days in March. We've actually assigned one of our staff members to focus particularly on that, on that niche. And we have put in place all the tools for being able to monitor it, because it's almost like, it's not a competition, but it allows for rewards, after you meet a certain number of, a certain threshold. And it's directing visitations to the websites that allow you for onward booking. And people are, would be logging in their references and logging in their actual sales. And we are putting them in contact with travel agents who actually sell the destination. And of course there's a reward to them at the end of every quarter, and then at the end of the year, you give a prize to the most productive, or the most active person, or who has made the most referrals, to the destination.
I look forward to the results actually, and I think from what I can see, many persons are excited about it, and so I guess it's left to be seen whether this excitement would carry on.
Translate into numbers, yes, and I have every confidence that it will.
I believe so as well. I believe so as well. We're due for a commercial break. When we come back, we'll be continuing our discussion with Mr. Louis Lewis, who's my guest tonight. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to In Touch. I'm your host, Jadia Japé-Manuel, and we are speaking tourism tonight. My guest is the Director of Tourism, Mr. Louis Lewis. We were speaking a little bit about the arrivals, and I also want to focus on the issue of visitor spending. And I remember the last time you were here, we spoke about the figures, and we spoke about the expenditure, being able to measure how much people spend, where they spend as well. And I think an interesting point that you made a little while ago was the rate at which we sell in the destination, because that matters. If we have to basically put the destination on sale, the number of visitors may be a little bit higher, but what is spent in the country at the end of the day would be a little bit less. Yes, how are we doing in terms of visitor expenditure, and in what areas are we seeing the movement? Because I must tell you, even before you respond, that the president of the Vendors Association says as people are coming, they are not spending money in the destination because the goods are not moving in the vendors arcade and in these areas. What say you to this?
Okay. But in the first place, let me clarify that the beneficiaries of increases in arrivals and increases in expenditure are not uniform across the playing field. Okay. But what it signals is that there are opportunities for us to capitalize on that increase in the numbers. Say for instance, in the case where the demand for the destination has become that strong that you are having more people, and the hoteliers are not forced to discount their prices, it means that the hoteliers in the sense are able to charge a little more for the accommodation. So that makes it more beneficial for them as an operation to continue to employ people for longer periods of time, or put the other way around, to not lay off people continuously, because of falling prices. Then you have the other situation where if the room revenue is higher, then the connectivity between the operations. So, say for instance, somebody spending 200 US per night allows the hotel now to be able to purchase more goods. They consume more electricity, more
Right.
water. So that's connected to our utility services. There's also the insurance component. There is also the transportation component. There is the vended opportunity, but that vended opportunity has a greater connectivity with the absolute volume of people that are coming. So it does not matter as much how much they are spending, but it matters more who is coming and where they are actually spending. So it's a complicated, it's a very complex dynamic. And when we announce that there are increases, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is going to increase. But what I can assure you is that the net benefit to the destination is positive. In the case of the actual performances, and here's
Yeah.
how it moves. If we have a situation where the US market is our largest, and that has grown most significantly. So you have your largest market growing fastest. The good thing is that the price of oil has gone down, and of course we see it and we feel it at the pump.
Yes.
But it allows for a lower cost of operation, so for say your airlift. That in itself allows the hotel sector to push the prices a little more, because at the end of the day, the traveling, the visitor makes a decision on the basis of the overall budget. So if he has a reduced airfare, he can now afford to spend a little more on the accommodation, and of course the destination benefits, because the airfare doesn't make a difference to the destination. It's the what's paid on island,
Yes,
that makes
yes.
a significant.
But as you mentioned,
difference.
airfare, I must ask you, because the former Minister for Tourism, Alan Chasney, did predict that we would be suffering in the U.S. market as a result of the government's decision not to go the way of guaranteeing seats. And airlift was an issue, really. But we are seeing increases. You spoke of the increase in the U.S. market, 11%. At a time where we have reduced the budget and we are not spending as much as we did before on airlift. What then is the magic to the numbers that we are seeing from the US, quite apart from having reductions in oil and so on? Is there a specific strategy that is working for the US, or are we simply relying on movements in the US economy?
Well, we are relying on movements in the US economy, but that's not the entire story. It's all about the strategy that has been employed. Say between 2008 and up to beginning of 2012, we had gone out deliberately as a strategy to get additional airlift to St. Lucia, and that helped, particularly in 2010, which was our strongest year for a while. What allowed us to do that is that we spent tremendously on airlift, but at the same time we were selling the destination in a very highly competitive environment. In terms of best deals and prices from the hotel side were very low. So if you look at the real benefit that came out of that, we had the volumes, but we did not have the quantitative benefit. And it's a very large number, I think, in terms of airlift over that period of time. We got an additional, or we were able to attract an additional 20,000 seats, but we spent about $24 million to get that, when you take the cumulative effect of how much we had guaranteed and what we had to pay back and that sort of thing. In between 2012 and now, we've been able to attract an additional 22,000 seats.
At what cost?
$1.8 million. $1.8
So we
million.
spent $24
Yeah.
million.
Totally different environments, a totally different approach. You see, what we are doing now is selling the destination on the strength of its attributes and what the demand factors are.
Right.
And we have gotten to the point now, and where the demand for the destination is that strong that the conversations between ourselves and the airlines are far easier. So, say for instance, we have, it took us a lot of negotiation and discussion and thing to get JetBlue to fly out of New York direct to St. Lucia. Initially, it cost us tremendously, and the airline would not have flown if we had not subsidized that flight.
Right.
But now the conversation is easier. They're flying from New York to St. Lucia 5 times, 6 times, sometimes, weekly, well, during the winter months on a daily basis. And they're now flying out of Boston, which is an additional. Delta has been flying to St. Lucia out of Atlanta,
yes.
but now they're flying a direct service, although once a week for the time being,
yes.
But it's coming to St. Lucia. So it has created more competition on that major pocket, which is New York. You also have Delta, on occasions, having as many as 3 flights, on one day into St. Lucia over the weekend. The demand is that strong. We have United Airlines. They initially started off with 1 flight, and they're about to move to 3, and there are many more options that are available. The dialogue is just totally different. It's on the basis of the demand, and we have strong marketing resources at the back. And marketing makes a phenomenal difference. If you create that demand,
right,
you will fill the plane, eventually. It is almost pointless, subsidizing entirely as a strategy. I mean, you just hope that people would come off, to the flight. It's pointless subsidizing, and then you don't have marketing at the back of it, to support these
and the airlines themselves, if they are guaranteed the revenue, then there would not be this, urgent or aggressive marketing strategy on their ends as well.
And that's where the conversation has to happen. You have to create that demand, and then get to the airline. But if you go talk to the airline, put on the flight, and then hope that because there's a flight available, somebody will jump on the plane, that doesn't really translate into
But given the movements that we are seeing now in the U.S. markets, I do not know what the projections are for this year, but do you believe that in terms of our current capacity and our airlift, that we are able to, the monies that we are spending right now and the strategies that we are aggressively pursuing, do we have the capacity to bring these people to St. Lucia? Is our airlift sufficient, or are we in constant dialogue and trying to find new opportunities and new points of travel?
Well, I'm afraid that we get into a point where it is where we cannot grow indefinitely. But we had a point where when we took a very close look at the dynamics of the airlift versus the capacity, there is still room for us to grow by about the 5% in the overall. But let me give you the broad picture. What has happened is that we do the destination promotions and enhancement, and and create the impressions about the destinations. The hotels do the actual sales, and it's only when the two of us work in tandem with each other we are able to achieve that sort of results that we are having here now. Because the U.S. market is strong, and we have very good connectivity, and we have created that demand, and people are now willing to travel, and you actually see them. Some of the hotels have switched their attention to the U.S. market. What that means is that we have to pay very close attention to what is happening on the UK side, because if everybody switches their attention on the other side, then you create a problem on the other one, and you don't want to have all eggs in one basket scenario.
Right.
So it's that combined effort between the tourist board's promotions and the hotel sales that we have to be monitoring very closely. In January in particular, we saw a 9% decline in our UK travel, in our UK visitors. And we're not entirely lost as yet. And I just need to take a sip of water.
Sure.
In January of 2014, we had a significant increase. So it's like measuring growth against a previous high point.
Okay.
Sorry. It's for us to see now, how do we get back to a point of growth?
Yeah, and I guess you would have to establish what a reasonable base would be in that regard as well. But the fact that you mentioned the hotels and working alongside the hotels, it would bring me to my next question, because I'm sure you've heard some of the comments being made by members of the public, and especially persons who are not yet at a place of comfort because they believe that the tourism industry is too vulnerable, that the slightest changes that you would have in the international market would impact us. Many persons believe the hotels are not doing enough, that the burden of marketing should not be so heavily carried by the government of St. Lucia. The Prime Minister announced in his budget an initiative by the SLHTA, and it sounded very interesting and sounded very good, because what it said to me is that the SLHTA would be taking up some responsibility for the marketing of the destination. 1 year on, where are we with this? Are we seeing the returns, or are we still, you know, in the phase where it is just discussion?
No, actually, in October of last year, the Hotel and Tourism Association launched this fund called the Tourism Enhancement Fund, where on a voluntary basis, the guests are invited to make a contribution to that fund. I think, and I want to be very careful, since October, between October and probably the end of February, that fund has actually grown to about 1.8 million, if not $2 million.
October to
last
February.
year, yeah, and that is based on
It's like about 4
contributions.
months.
Well, yes, it's about in that space of time.
No wonder IPA is not, you know.
Well,
So is it that we have the tourists probably contributing to that fund as opposed to spending somewhere else, or are we? Is this
Well,
money that would otherwise be going back to the UK, the US, and Canada?
No, as a matter of fact, it's on the departure, so that would have come.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
So when they're checking out,
Good thing you clarify that, because
it's,
I really would not want the SLHTA to be accused of keeping the taxi driver and the vendor and so on away from their daily bread.
Yeah, no, but it's interesting some of the things that have been done with that fund, and you know, it has actually assisted in the whole development initiatives. Like for instance, the Ministry of Education and Social Transformation and I forget what some of the other titles are, have developed this after-school initiative, after-school program.
Yes.
For persons to, you know, well, for kids whose parents would have been at work.
Yes.
And there are components of that which are funded via the Tourism Enhancement Fund. There's some relief that has been given, you know, to some of the communities, you know, around Christmas time. The Tourism Enhancement Fund also assisted in the funding of a tremendous initiative towards airlift from Canada, you know, over 100,000, you know, US dollars. So it has actually been utilized for the development of tourism. There's some infrastructural development work, for instance, up in the north of the island, outside of the Rodney Bay area, where, you know, there's a bit of pedestrian traffic, you know, going across the road there. It has actually, you know, they have actually utilized that fund for some of that work up there. So it has, you know, been used for a number of important initiatives, and I think that's the whole intention.
Yeah, I think this is an excellent initiative, and in fact, I heard that there were plans as well to offer scholarships to St. Lucians wanting to pursue hospitality as a field of study as well. If we can focus a little bit on the figures and to look at the projections for this year, I am certain, even without asking, that you would have your figures and projections, and that you would be working within reasonable expectation, that you want to achieve certain goals, you know, during months. I'm sure that would be guided by trends as well. Can we expect, from all of the information that is available to the SLTB, can we expect another record year in arrivals?
Well, everything suggests to us that we will have increases by the end of 2015. We expect our U.S. market to continue to grow. We also expect the UK, which is our second largest market, to grow. We're actually very encouraged by some of the things that we've seen happening from the Caribbean market, and approaching the Caribbean market is very different from the U.S. and, you know, and Canada and the UK. It's really trying to get people who are traveling for business, at the same time people who are traveling for short stay vacations. The French departments offer a tremendous opportunity for us, and we are actually doing a number of, you know, new initiatives to try to get more people from those departments across here. And so at the end of the day, we are projecting that we would have another 6% increase. However, January and February have gone beyond the trend. You know, we are actually seeing that we are arrivals are up by about 14% in the US, jumping as high as 32%
32%.
32% in the month for January. That's an increase.
Wow.
Where
Wow.
in 2014 we had 9,200 visitors from the US for the month, and in 2015 we had 12,264. So that is a significant increase. The UK, on the other hand, and Europe generally, we have some challenges there, and maybe I can just run through them.
Sure.
The US dollar has strengthened, and the unfortunate or fortunate thing is that our tourism product is priced in US dollars.
Yes.
The US dollar has gone up by about 15% in the past year. So that automatically makes vacation in St. Lucia for the typical European traveler,
Yes,
15% more expensive. So that's a challenge that we have. Then during the course of the year, we know we'll be losing at least 400 rooms. One with the temporary closure of the Smugglers Cove,
yeah.
and also Cotton Bay. That's a significant stock of room capacity that we'll be losing. And these are properties that produce strong in the summer months in particular, when it is very difficult in the other markets. Having said so, all of that is towards development. There are plans to expand the room stock in those hotels. So after a year we'll see them come back on board and we continue to grow. During that interval, the challenge for us is to drive more arrivals to the destination in the properties that are less than at maximum capacity. So it is still possible for us. We just have to work doubly hard in 2015 to keep that trend up. And that's a challenge that we give ourselves.
When we look at tourism and we look at the tourism performance, usually we are speaking about the hotels and the established, rooms. But there is a segment of the tourism product that we usually leave out. And I know it is not deliberate, but as a result of Cricket World Cup and even subsequent to that, we had a number of bed and breakfast and villa type guest houses basically being constructed, both in the north and we have seen some in the south of the island as well. What is the relationship between these smaller accommodation type, we can't even call them hotels, but guest house basically, or rooms? How do they factor into the numbers, whether it be the, in terms of expenditure? We know that people come, but are we able to track where exactly they stay, what services are available, so that they can be part of the figures that we present or part of our projections when we look forward to performances in the future?
What we are seeing is that a number of those properties are playing an increasingly important role in providing accommodation. There is a challenge in terms of identifying exactly where they are going, but if you look at the typical immigration form and it asks you for place of stay, what we are seeing is a growing set number of people going to other paid accommodations. So for instance, people would indicate typically whether they go to Sandals, Ladera, whatever, it's actually itemized. But when you start to see other paid accommodation, we know is that growing villa market. There's some operators that we deal with, tour operators, people who sell packages. And there's one in particular called Airbnb. So if we just go to airbnb.com, and in our interactions with those, with that tour operator, they have over 1,000 rooms selling on St. Lucia. Let's say 1,000 rooms. One person may have 3 rooms or 6 rooms or 8 rooms or a 10-room villa, and it adds up. And they are doing an active trade on St. Lucia. And what we have to ensure is that those apartments become part of the tax net.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, they are benefiting from the promotions that we are doing.
Yes.
And therefore, they should be contributing towards, the revenue to the state. It's a very interesting area that is one of the fastest growing, and we have to pay a lot more attention to them, because it's all well and good when they are benefiting from the promotions and, our rivals are increasing. But if something unfortunate should happen, the entire country pays for it. So there's a shared responsibility,
we have to ensure
one,
are maintained,
that there are proper standards and we know who is doing what, and at the same time, they contribute towards, the cost of their own operation.
The issue of crime and the general safety of both citizens and visitors, it is something that impacts the tourism industry greatly. I noticed that there was an initiative where the SLHDA, SLTB collaborated with the regional partners to have a conversation on security in the region. What led to this initiative, and did we establish any specific guidelines for protecting visitors or responding to unfortunate situations surrounding visitors in the region?
Yeah, well, the Hotel and Tourism Association spearheaded that initiative, and it's really a dialogue with the media in particular. They brought in some regional experts on crime and safety and, media reporting and that sort of thing. And the whole idea was really to have an interaction with the media in particular in terms of how do we report on crime. It was very eye-opening. We got a clear understanding of what the perspectives are from the media in terms of how they report the information that they're looking for, and why it is important for them to to put that information outside. We were able also to express our concerns, and it's in no way an attempt to muzzle the press and
Yes, I would warn you that freedom of information is the cry of the day.
Right. Well, yeah, but you see, one of the things that came out which was most striking is the absence of information.
Okay.
And who do you contact, when you're aware that something has happened? And from our perspective, and I say our, meaning the tourism industry's perspective, all we are asking for is to report on the facts and avoid some of the sensationalism.
Well, that's hard in this climate.
It's hard, but you have to understand how important it is for us. We're not asking you.
But not
we're
me.
not asking, when I say you, we're not asking the media, to gloss over it or ignore it. I mean, that would have been ideal, but the reality is that, it happens and you need to report. I would not want to live in a country where I'm not aware of what is happening. So you want to know. And there's a role for the media. The challenge for us is how it is being done. So say, for instance, somebody gets mugged, or let me use a worst case scenario, somebody is killed. Don't say 3 people were killed, or it was a gruesome attack and go into all sort of gory details. It's an issue. Just leave the emotionalism out of it. We are in an unfortunate situation where our crime statistics are far less than any of our major source markets, but the impact on us is far greater than it could ever be on some of those destinations. The example I use sometimes, somebody may say, but we understand that there are muggings in St. Lucia. I mean, the muggings taken any place. My quick response is that if you're coming from the US, I never heard anywhere in the Caribbean, St. Lucia included, where somebody has gone into a school and gunned down 26 people.
But they will tell you the US doesn't sell itself as a paradise.
Well, regardless of that, the reality is that we are far safer here in St. Lucia.
I agree.
Any one incident is one too many.
Yes.
But at the same time, we definitely can't be compared with some of those, those other areas where more gruesome things happen on a daily basis.
But I take it that the SLTB and other industry partners continue to work very closely with the police, the Marine.
Yes, we work very closely with the police. As a matter of fact, there's an officer in the Ministry of Tourism who has been appointed as a safety and security officer, whose responsibility is interfacing with the police and the industry. When unfortunate things happen. We have developed among the agencies, the Ministry of Tourism, the St. Lucia Tourist Board, and also included the Hotel and Tourism Association, a crisis management plan, and it covers reporting on crime and safety and natural disasters and all these sorts of things. In terms of how do we deal and how do we respond to some of those initiatives, how we share information among ourselves with the press, and with the media. Because, like I say, the intention is, or the objective is not to cover it up. That's not, is how do we deal with it when something unfortunate has actually happened.
Safety of our tours, for example, and some of the packages that we're offering to persons who come to St. Lucia. I know that many persons are looking for the adventure, and for some of our visitors to be in the most remote places and the purest places, in that, with little human life and so on, it's attractive to a lot of individuals. We went through a period where, unfortunately, our cruise ship passengers, depends on where they choose to go. It appeared that some of the tour operators did not take very seriously or did not put in place measures that were necessary to ensure that the place would have been as secure as possible. Do we have specific guidelines or standards or routine checks where officials, for example, will go down to the Sulphur Springs Park or go down to a waterfall somewhere in Micoud where we know it is advertised and persons are likely to go to do a walkthrough, a security check, and to issue clearance and passes, or are we leaving it up to these individuals to put necessary measures in place?
You see, what we have developed in conjunction with the Bureau of Standards is a number of standards for different areas. We have not developed one for sites and attractions as yet.
Okay.
That is still work in progress.
Okay.
But you see, the issue for us is the mode of operation has been voluntary compliance. And it works very well when people adhere to a standard or there's an accepted mode of operation and you aspire to it and you work towards it and that sort of thing. But I think it has come to the point where the negative impacts of non-adherence is so onerous on the state that we may have to move to mandatory compliance. I'll give you a case in point. Somebody goes to a waterfall, which is advertised as an attraction and a tour, an organized tour. They have no provisions for security, despite the fact that it's in a very remote area. All it has to take is somebody from even another region coming from outside of that community to take advantage, of the opportunity, do something, unfortunate. And not only is the operator of the site, disadvantaged by that publicity, the entire destination.
Yes.
There was an unfortunate crime that took place in Vieux Fort at the end of 2013. That cost the tourist board over $100,000.
Wow.
Dealing with damage control and comfort of the relatives, and that sort of thing. These things are very expensive. And sometimes you deal with one situation and the international media would connect one with another and another, and even connect one with something that's taking place on another island for creating that bigger picture of, insecurity and these sort of things. And they are very expensive, and sometimes they never really go away. You are continuously spending what could have been marketing dollars trying to do damage control, trying to present the appropriate facts and then trying to mitigate against, the spreading of information that sometimes is just, blown out of proportion.
Indeed. We're due for a commercial break. When we come back, our telephone number will be on the screen so you can call in with your comments or your questions. Please stay in touch. We'll be right back. Welcome back to In Touch. I'm your host, Jadia Japierre Emmanuel. Our telephone number will go up on the screen so that you can call in with your comments or your questions. But in the meantime, I want to read a question that came in via email. It says, Mr. Lewis, you mentioned the amount allocated in your budget for marketing is between 50 to 60%. You also made mention of a 6% growth last year, and by the look of things, we are well on the way to surpass this figure. In terms of dollars and cents, how much is 50 to 60%, and in terms of numbers, 6%? Thanks.
Yeah, well, our budget, the annual budget for the tourist board in 2014 was actually $40 million. So that 60% of that would be $24 million. So we range between $22 to $24 million a year that we allocated specifically for marketing the destination.
Okay. In terms of the numbers coming into St. Lucia, the 6% growth that we recorded, how many persons actually came to St. Lucia last year?
Last year. In 2014, we had a total of, and I want to get the number, so let me refer to my notes.
Sure. 2013, 317,000?
Right, 317,000. Yes. Yeah.
And in 2014, I see that we had 338,158.
Right. Yeah. And that was actually an increase of 33,410 people That's,
Yes. So that would be what the 6%.
6% would represent.
Represents.
Yeah.
We have another comment that says, "Hi JD, I would like to pose this question to Mr. Lewis. What is the SLTV's position on trying out in another sector within the tourism industry, such as sports tourism? This is the fastest growing sector in the tourism industry, and I don't hear or see any real thrust behind being made for this sector. Why?" And this individual is actually saying that he's qualified in that area and studied in France, and that he or she, I'm not sure, believes that this is a sector we can look into.
Yeah, there's a tremendous potential with regard to sports tourism, and there are several ways in which you can approach it. One, we have facilities on the island that can allow large groups, for instance, people playing football and also cricket. We have a track, a stadium, and that sort of thing. Where our challenge is to be able to marry those facilities with the appropriate accommodation that makes it attractive.
Yeah.
And that is where the downside of some of the accommodation sector is. So you have a group of about 20-25 people who want to come for an extended period. An extended period could be anywhere between a week to 3 weeks, for whether it be a summer or whatever, winter, training camp. Is getting a room, a composition of rooms that are within a price range that is attractive, to make it, viable. That is a challenge for us. Notwithstanding that, we do host on an annual basis. We, meaning St. Lucia, does host on an annual basis a number of cricket teams from the UK. We do a lot of promotions around major events that are taking place, like you say, like the CPL has won West Indies, cricket team when they're on the circuit. We have hosted large. I know, for instance, last year we hosted a group of about 60 cheerleaders from somewhere in the US.
Yes,
These people were hosted down in the south of the island. These things are happening, but for it to be a regular strategy, churning out, a large set of numbers, we have that challenge of the services, the infrastructure that allows, for you to have the room stock within a price range and a facility within reasonable close proximity to allow for that synergy to happen.
And I suppose
the same from that.
And I suppose the same can be said for health tourism as well, because many persons have been saying, well, perhaps we can look at this area. Well, we know we have the new National Hospital on stream, but it probably would not be the best thing to go ahead with a very aggressive strategy while the facilities are not yet available, or we are not able to pinpoint some of the advantages basically to come into St. Lucia for that purpose as opposed to going to somewhere else.
Yeah, and what we have to do, I mean, if there is the capacity at the new hospital to develop an area of excellence, you cannot be providing all the services in all areas, but choose a particular area where we become experts in that area, and then you offer that service that comes with complimentary accommodation and all of the other areas that associate with it. And just think of it, I mean, whenever there is something major, traumatic, people are flown across to the US or flown across to Martinique and these sort of areas. We can select one area, become experts in that area, and then for the entire OECS or rest of the English-speaking CARICOM, we can become that place, to be referred to. And as we grow, we can expand those areas. So these are possibilities that exist.
Indeed. We're ready to take your phone calls, 452-7347. This is the number to dial for your questions or your comments. Mr. Lewis, I believe I would not allow you to leave here if we did not speak about jazz. I must tell you, I'm very excited about the 2015 St. Lucia Jazz and Arts Festival. I think I have some of my favorite artists in the mix, and I'm beginning to feel like I don't even need main stage jazz. When we have Chronixx at,
at the Mindy Park.
Yes, this is my show. He's my artist, really. And then we have Soufre Jazz announcing that Jah Cure will be performing there. Do you see a little threat from what we used to call the fringe events? Because these are not fringe events anymore. These are main stage events outside of Mindy Park.
Actually, I'm very excited about the move in that direction. What we have as the mission statement for the Jazz Festival is to provide the best jazz festival experience in the world. And I think we can get to that point. Our festival is unique in itself. You have a number of low cost and free shows that have exceptionally good quality.
Yes.
And with the fact that we've now rebranded to Jazz and Arts, it allows us a lot of latitude. So you could see bands like, the Secret Band being featured on our main stage at Four Door sort of performance. You could start to, and if you were at Pigeon Island last year on the Friday, you saw a theatrical piece on the history of culture in St. Lucia on main stage. I mean, that's the sort of latitude, that things that we can do. We're actually developing a platform for the arts in itself, and we're working very, very closely with the CDF, to showcase. But in terms of the composition or the development of the lineup and the schedule for the Jazz and Arts Festival, we try to ensure that we have something in it for everybody.
Yeah. Although some people want every show to be their show. I mean, when I look at some of the comments, there are so many shows.
Yeah.
And for me, if I can find one out of all of these events, then I am satisfied.
Right, yeah.
But I noticed that there are some persons who want every single show to appeal to them. And so they are complaining about some of the acts that are on there. For me, I am a reggae lover, and so once I have that, I am fine. But who really are we catering to? Because I think some people have become lost in jazz. They're saying that this is not a jazz festival. I think we need to remove that name and let's just call it a music festival. Or some people are saying, well, this is not a good lineup. I really do not know who they expect to come to that show and so on. What is the strategy behind putting together the lineup?
Okay.
Are you looking for me or are you looking for the tourism dollar?
Okay. At the end of the day, the jazz festival is a marketing tool. And the music is the show part of it. And there's a lot of work in the background, which is where the real benefit of the Jazz Festival to St. Lucia takes place.
Okay.
It's really the public relations that we get out of it that is of tremendous value. Yes, it's nice when you have good numbers in attendance. It works well. But what really gives us the benefit from the festival is the mentions that take place. So, for instance, we have a cadre of writers and journalists who are writing about the festival from several different perspectives. So you have people writing on heritage, on culinary aspects, on soft adventure, on health and wellness, on diving, all of these things. And they are associating their stories with the festival itself, so that you will see a feature on St. Lucia in a spa magazine, tying the spa experience on St. Lucia with the emergence of a world-class jazz festival, and gives us eyes and ears continuously throughout the year. When we do our surveys, about 20% of the people who visit St. Lucia indicate at some point or the other that they knew about St. Lucia through the jazz festival, whether it was somebody else who came, a write-up on it, a promotion of the festival, or having been there before. So it is a significant, tool.
This is how we know it's still relevant.
Yeah, it is still relevant. And then what we do in terms of the construction of the lineup is that we try to cater for everybody. So you have a lot of the community events, and you have Caribbean jazz, you have Afro-Caribbean, jazz events taking place. Then you have the Caribbean night. Then you have this nice blend of music at the opening, which is taking place, at
which is the best
festival.
show this year, I must tell you, just because Chronix is there.
Just because it's your preference. Yeah. So we have reggae inside the festival.
Yes.
They have some good performance for the people who are into the R&B. We have the signature event, which is the core base of the festival, which is jazz, taking place what used to be at Gaiety, but it now will be held at the Cultural Center. And trust me, when you see the Cultural Center on the night that
it will be transformed.
It will be of that quality that we are catered for. Then you have Saturday, which is a World Music Day, and then Sunday is sing along. So there is something in the jazz festival for everybody.
Sunday is sing along. Well, my sing along is the opening of jazz. I don't, I'm really excited about this show. And I'm getting some comments about the St. Lucia Jazz and Arts Festival, but I'm also getting complaints that our lines are not working. I'm not too sure what is going on, but I'm getting some complaints that our callers are not getting through. But in the meantime, you can send your messages to my WhatsApp to 855-5631. And I will be sure to read it right there. But one of the comments coming in on the Jazz and Arts Festival, she's asking how much did we spend on the festival last year? And whereas we call it the Jazz and Arts Festival, I did not see the arts being featured as much at the launch of the festival itself. Many persons were singing, and the announcement of the lineup did not give any specific attention to our arts and culture.
Yeah. At the time that we launched the festival, we had not fully developed the arts component.
Okay.
And it's something that we worked on. But what you and the comment is actually a very fair and accurate one.
Okay.
We are infusing more and more the arts, into the festival as we go forward. This is just the third year since the rebranding. What we'll be doing this year that is very different from previous years is that we'll have an arts village in the Rodney Bay area between the two malls. You will be seeing a high-end visual arts display of some of the more prominent visual artists in St. Lucia. You'll be seeing sculpture, on display as well. We have the spoken word in high definition or whatever they call it. These are the poets that are coming out, to ply their trade. You will also be seeing some of the capacity building workshops. So we're having somebody from the Norman Manley School of Arts who will be coming and do a dance workshop.
Okay.
You also will be having some of the jazz purists performers. Those will be performing at what used to be Gaiety, which is now the Cultural Center. Be working with the St. Lucia School of Music. So, doing some of that capacity building. You will see through the town of Grosile some of the traditional arts that that were commonplace years gone by, represented in a modern environment. You will be seeing on the Friday night a theatrical performance between the two main performers, so between Beres Hammond and
Mishak is on
and
there.
Mishak,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, you will be seeing a cultural performance on stage, something that is produced specifically for the jazz festival. So the arts are coming. The reception areas at all of the main stage events will have artistic expressions. So Haute Couture, which is the fashion show, is coming out with some
Maybe I'll
artistic
go for the first time this
components within it. So yeah, you can look out to something really exciting and interesting. The arts are definitely being more prominent this year, and we still, are building it slowly.
year. Still on the jazz, and I want to tell you that the number that I just gave is for WhatsApp messages only. I noticed I'm getting a few calls from there. My cell phone is not connected to the show. We're working on the phone line, so hopefully before the end of tonight's show, we will be taking your calls. However, you could send your WhatsApp messages to 285-5631. I have a question that says, I would like to find out what are the plans for developing the tourism product in Vieux Fort. And I noticed that would be more directed towards the Ministry of Tourism. But I do not know if SLTB has any specific plans or programs geared towards the South.
Yeah, well, the SLTB's responsibility is really for marketing. Yes, but having said so, Vieux Fort does present tremendous opportunities based on its openness for development and significant investments. I will be happy the day I see a major hotel or hotel property being built in the south of the island. I understand that one of the existing properties, and I want to be careful how I say that, is undergoing some expansion and putting an additional set of rooms in that part of the island. So there are plans that are taking place for development.
I have another question that says, what level of support has been, I would like to know what level of support has been given to the community jazz and there goes a call, and the fringe events.
Well, every year we get more requests than we can actually cater for. And the caution for us is that the Tourist Board doesn't want to get to the position where we are subsidizing all the events. And we have to be very careful. Some of those events have revenue streams, and we try to assist in the development, but at the same time we do not want to underwrite the cost. There's some events, like for instance, if I may pick on one, like Moshi Jazz. It's an open air arrangement. There's no revenue to be gathered from people attending those events, so they have to depend tremendously on sponsorship. It's in an area like that we can assist in collaborating, so we might lend them some of our infrastructure. We might assist them in putting an artist, catering for an artist, to perform at their shows and functions, that sort of collaborations. But in terms of handing out specific cash and things, so it's something that we do on a needs basis. If there's a revenue stream, then of course we are less likely to be involved in that process.
Indeed. I believe we are ready to take your phone calls now, 452-7347. Let's hope everything goes well. You can call in with your questions or your comments. Again, 452-7347. I see I'm already being accused of protecting the director. Good night, you're on the air.
Hi, good night to you, Julia. Good night to you, Mr. Lewis.
Hi, good night.
Mr. Lewis, I heard somebody make a comment a while ago about sports tourism. And I strongly somebody who believes in sports tourism as well. And I'm looking at an avenue where Darren Sammy is going all around the world, right, playing cricket. I believe, in my own view, that we could have a flag bearer and a T-shirt having some message about St. Lucia, because you know that the cricket match will be carried live all over the world, that people will be seeing this flag bearer of St. Lucia all over the world. And I think this is an avenue that we can look into to expose St. Lucia in that avenue, to have a flag bearer where Darren Sammy is playing cricket every single country all around the world. So I am a big fan of sports tourism, and I believe that is somewhere that the tourist board should look into.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution. But I'd quit my job and be that flag bearer, I can tell you that.
Yeah, well, you see, here's how, you know, it's a funny situation. You can have a flag bearer who may put up the flag of St. Lucia, but the average consumer might not associate the flag with the destination. It's well known to us, but it may not necessarily make that connection. What would help is if somebody had, say, a website address,
Right.
and then how do you translate that, you know, into visits to your country? I mean, you'd be lucky if the camera focuses on that person, and then you have the issues of ambush marketing and you know operations at those venues.
Yes.
And based on our experience at Cricket World Cup, you know, is very, very tight. I'm not saying that to make an excuse. I'm just saying so to give you a reason why you don't see some of those things, and then the cost of doing some of those things and what the returns are, you know, is sometimes questionable.
But Sammy himself is an asset.
Exactly. And what we do is that at some of the events, we have some of our well-known iconic individuals.
Yes.
Athletes are most attractive,
Yes.
you know, to attend. And, you know, it does cause a buzz about the destination.
Yes. I feel very
and while
excited.
even if he may not be there in person,
Yes.
but to mention some of the successes of our iconic sportsmen, and we have Darren Sammy, you know, it does cause that additional awareness of the destination.
And sometimes during the matches, the commentators, would speak about him, St. Lucia, and of course that in itself would be good. We've lost that call. Continue to call in at 452-7347. We'll be taking your calls. A comment is just coming in. It has to do with the issue of crime. And the person was asking, does the Director of Tourism see any fallout from the recently I think the person is still typing, so I'll wait until that comment comes in more clearly. Again, 452-7347 is the number to dial. We have one here on jazz. What is happening with jazz in Balenbush this year? Is there anything on the table?
Yeah, well, there will be no jazz in Balenbush this year. As a matter of fact, the group that normally hosted that Laborie Productions have decided that they are not putting on any events this year. Having said so, there's the Move Marsam, which normally takes place in Vieux-Fort.
After main stage.
After main stage, yes, which now gives them, you know, an opportunity for them to put on the show, you know, and that is actually happening.
Yeah. A question for the Director of Tourism. What is his ministry doing or the Tourist Board doing to get direct flights from Puerto Rico to St. Lucia? LIAC presently does not offer a direct flight. Also, we want an update on Red Jet.
Well, the update on Red Jet is that there is no Red Jet. With regard to Puerto Rico was a market when you had a strong feed going into San Juan. That is no longer there. If I may use it as an example, American Airlines used to fly in as many as 80 flights a day. That has gone down to somewhere in the range of between 10 and 20. You know, a lot of the cruise business, which is what they had served before, and it benefited us because there was a high volume of traffic, and as a strategy, American Airlines were flying in to San Juan and then feeding all the other Eastern Caribbean destinations on American Eagle. that is no longer the case. So a lot of the business is now transited through Miami.
We have the question, the impacts question. Sorry, I had to rephrase that so that it can be clear. Some persons have indicated that our tourism sector will suffer as a result of the impacts report. I wish to ask the director whether there has been any direct questions as to the safety and security of St. Lucia as a consequence, and are there measures in place to ensure that we reassure our visitors that we are safe and we are still the #1 place to travel in the region?
Yeah, well, to answer it very squarely, one, we have not had any direct inquiries with regard to that, and that's as at before I came in here tonight.
Okay.
So that's okay. But you must also remember that what is really affecting us now is the current state of our safety. The incidents that are referred to in that report were taking place in a year gone past, and we're now dealing with it. The repercussions of it. So St. Lucia is safe currently, while we deal with some of those issues.
Next, first, I wish to commend the Tourist Board on connecting with the diaspora as a ready source of committed ambassadors who are embedded within the makers of interest. Next, we might take for granted that we live on an island with raw natural beauty because we are here every day, but for our tourists, we should aim to promote that aspect of our island destination. One, the questions are, what steps are being taken, if any, to advertise the raw natural beauty of the island as a destination? And if it is not happening, why not?
Well, the person presumes that it's not happening.
Yeah.
But actually, St. Lucia's topography, our pristine environment is an attraction, is part of our core attributes and what we sell as a point of distinction. So it actually is happening. If you look at any of the ads online for the destination, you will see our iconic pitos, and there's no other better depiction of the nature, that we have, so we do feature our natural beauty as part of the attractiveness of St. Lucia, and that's why it concerns us very much that anything that affects the quality of the beaches, the quality of our water, the environment, actually work to diminish our strength in the marketplace. This is what we sell ourselves on. Our topography allows us the wide range of soft adventure that we have, that we sell as part of our core advantage. The whole difference between the tranquil Caribbean Sea and the active Atlantic on the other side that allows things like kite surfing and wave riding and these sort of things, and the Caribbean side allowing you the coastal cruises, rest and relax, sunset and all of these sort of things, scuba diving, snorkeling and these sort of things. That difference in a small geographic location, that is what is our advantage, so we use it.
Did we have a call on the line? Good night, you're on the air.
Hi, good evening, Julia, and good evening to you, guest.
Good evening.
So, Louis, I would like to say congratulations to you. You're really cool.
Caller, we're not hearing you clearly. We've lost that call. You seem to be calling from a bad location. You can try again, 452-7347. I can tell you that we're getting so many questions about jazz. And everybody's asking whether there is jazz in every nook and cranny of St. Lucia. Some communities that I've never seen before, I'm getting questions, can you ask Mr. Lewis whether there is jazz, so, and so. We saw last year that a number of events were happening for the first time, so Arthur Lewis Jazz and so on. So I'm hoping that as we get closer to the actual dates, or even after we have the opening on the 30th of April, that we'll begin to see or hear the announcements coming from other areas. Good night, you're on the air. We've lost our call again. 452-7347 is the number to dial. What exactly is being done with the Latin American market? I've heard a lot of talk about tapping into Brazil and some of these other areas, but we are not seeing any movement. Are they still working behind the scenes, or have we given up on this as an option?
No, actually, we have not given up at all. You see, and that's part of the strategy and very deliberate approach that we've taken into the Latin American market. What the Latin American market does, and just by way of the rationale, it has a different cyclical traveling pattern that allows us to fill the middle of the year when numbers are lower than the winter time, traditional winter times. But what we are doing is sensitizing the market. We are working very closely with the operators, the tour operators and the major travel agents across there in the marketplace to sensitize them about the existence and availability of St. Lucia. And we've done that for about a year and a half. What we have done now is reach out to two possible airlines to fly to St. Lucia. We've shared our marketing objectives with them. They have both indicated that they are willing, to engage us in a formal way. And when the time is right, which is within this calendar year, we will, have that fly across to St. Lucia. So it's definitely a front burner issue, and we're working very hard to ensure that once we launch the service, we don't end up, spending a whole set of money subsidizing seats. We'd have created that demand first, and then, it will actually transit. But right now, St. Lucia is actually being sold in Brazil via Miami.
I continue to receive some complaints about the phone lines. I apologize for that, but you could try again at 452-7347, and you can also send your comments via WhatsApp. Good night, you're on the air.
Yes, good night.
Hi,
Lydia.
good night.
Hi, I've listened to your talk here tonight,
Mm-hmm.
but I find that government is really playing, like, that's a big investment when it comes to the taxi sector, tourism and other stuff. But when I look at all those taxi operators and those different stuff, to me, we need a lot of little changes to be done, especially in the way that people conduct themselves in terms of tourism.
Mm-hmm.
But I find that what I was looking at the last time, I look at the system, the way that both of the taxi operators, they do this stuff. I think that government should really have somebody in place. So actually, some people just do an investigation to see how drivers and commuters, like the guys who are in charge of tourist stuff, like selling tolls, see how they conduct themselves in terms of tourism. Because I think that a lot of unprofessional behavior is displayed in that thing. And I think that you should take on that in very serious. Because you're spending a lot of money
Yes,
on those
indeed.
things.
And that has been an area of concern, Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the areas where it is most glaring is outside of La Place Carénage on a cruise ship
My
day.
gosh, yes.
It speaks to two things. One, the limitations of the space, and I know that there's a port development that will allow for a better operation there. But at the same time, it's the free rider sort of arrangement where there's a authorized taxi operator for that area, but a number of people are coming from different regions and trying to to jump in, and that sort of thing. And we have to get to the point where we organize some of those things and have proper operations, and it's not just become a free-for-all, because what happens is that it creates a situation of uneasiness.
Yes.
And then what people would have come out and face with a barrage of overzealous people, and that's the term I prefer to use. They just turn around and go back on the boat, and what happens is that it denies us and deprives us of an opportunity to earn some
It
additional
affects
revenue.
us as well. I must tell you, it affects us as well. And I think the average solution just dreads passing in that area on a cruise ship day.
Yeah.
Particularly if you have more than one cruise ship in port, the traffic becomes a nightmare to manage, and even walking there becomes very uncomfortable for the average solution. We take a call. Good night, you're on the air.
Hey, good night,
Hi, good night.
and good night to Mr. Louis.
Hi, good evening.
I heard earlier your discussion about involving the diaspora in marketing and so on. I have two questions for you. Is there a specific unit in the diaspora for marketing? And I also was interested, I know some time ago that we had St. Lucia, a marketing drive in Brazil and so on. So I just wanted to know how that market is doing, because a lot of persons, when we hear about tourism and so on, we automatically think of the U.S. markets. And I know that the tourist board is actually branching out into different areas. So I just wanted to know how that market is doing. Thank you very much.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah, okay. I just before you asked that question, I had actually addressed the Latin American one, but I'll come back to it in summary. But with regard to how we are approaching the diaspora, we've been working closely with the various associations in those individual markets. So in the US, we have a number of St. Lucia associations that we are in contact with. We actually did a consultative exercise before we launched the program with them. In the UK is the same, in Canada is the identical, is working through the St. Lucia associations in those various jurisdictions and reaching out to the actual members and engaging them and giving them the tools of the trade and to enhance the program.
The Brazil
Yeah,
market.
with regard to the Brazilian market, is something that I said earlier on that we still have as a front burner issue. The process so far has been, the process has been showcasing the destination, sensitizing the market, and dealing with all the major operators. And we are now at the stage where we are about to engage the airline. You have to do it to create that demand first, so that when the airline starts to fly, you don't have an empty plane that you are just subsidizing seats for. That it actually works and translates into activity. It's a tedious process, and it's something that we have to do very carefully, especially when you're penetrating a new market with a different language. You also need to have, your hotel operators in your destination who are willing and capable of accommodating those visitors, because when they come, they don't just come in and walk around in the street. They have to be, participate in that activity. So it's a tedious process. It takes time to happen. And when it happens, we just have to ensure that we don't spend a lot of money doing something that we could have done a little less expensive if we just, took a bit of a more strategic approach.
I have a question about the St. Lucia Jazz and Arts Festival, but even before I read the question, I think it is fair to say, and it would be very accurate to say, that since the rebranding of the St. Lucia Jazz and Arts Festival, that we have had more participation by local artists. In fact, prior to that, it is almost as if they had no place in the festival. But since the rebranding, we are seeing local artists on main stage. They were there before, but they're actually there in a bigger way, where they are headliners actually at the activities. But someone asked, what is being done to help the local musicians who produce very good content? Why are they not a part of the St. Lucia Jazz concert lineup? There are individuals with tremendous potential. Example, my personal favorite, Showing Dopes Bryce. And I know that there are local.
What we try to do is that over the years we have increased the number of local acts, performing at the festival. That there is no question in that. We have a situation where we just cannot put every single person, on. And what happens is that sometimes there's a perception that if you're not at the main stage event, that you're not performing at the jazz festival. But then if you're performing at Fordo, you still have an international audience. If you're performing in Soufrière, you still have an international
Even at the opening
audience.
Festival on the 30th.
Right,
because
exactly.
you will be sharing a stage with international artists.
And in most cases we have, if not just as many, but sometimes more local acts performing at the show. So the reality is that we've had a number of local performers at the
and Mishak is headlining Friday night. We have Mishak on Friday night, and I suspect, but this is my own view because of the genre of music that I like. I suspect Friday will be a massive show. You have Barry Hammond and you have Mishak on the same stage. It is going to be a great show.
The point that sometimes escapes us is that at the end of the day, we have very good artists and performers in St. Lucia.
Yes.
But they're not very, very well known outside. And if you're developing a festival to attract visitors, in as good as they are, you need those that also have, you need a combination of good performers and you need a combination of people who can attract a crowd from overseas. And that's the balance that we try to
And I think there is a lesson for us too, us St. Lucians, because usually we demand certain things that St. Lucians are featured, that we have more of our local people on, but we do not show the appreciation by our action, by coming out to the shows to support them very early.
Or buying a ticket.
Exactly. So sometimes what would happen is that people would judge the length of the show and they would come just to hear Barry Hammond or just to see Robin Thicke and forget about the entire show. So while it may satisfy them that this person's name is printed in a booklet or in a brochure, we need to encourage more people to come out to support the local artists as well, because you said there's an abundance of talent, but we need to demand it by purchasing the tickets, by going out to the shows, by supporting the local music, and then I think there would be an even greater response by the St. Lucia Tourist Board. But I think the creation of the side stage at the main stage events, I think it is something that gives a lot of exposure to our local artists as well.
And what we have done, we have used the side stage to showcase emerging acts. So you wouldn't see a Bo Hinkson on a side stage. But you would see...
Showing Dopes Bryce was on the side stage.
I was about to say, has actually performed. you know, and you would see, you know, a number
The
of
spoken word.
and
Yeah.
up and coming performers, you know, at the side stage. And,
Believe me, if the local artists were not there, I would be making the most noise because I am a believer. There are some
I would
artists.
be making more noise than
Oh,
you.
well, exactly. I support local music, and I think we need to encourage them and provide the opportunities for them to grow. We cannot limit them simply, you know, to carnival and so on. But we need to give them more opportunities and more options to grow. I have another comment there, and it is on the cruise sector. And she's asking, are we experiencing increases in our cruise passenger arrivals as well, or are we simply speaking about the stayovers?
We are actually experiencing increases in our cruise passenger arrivals. Last year we went up by 8%, and 8%, you know, translates into an additional, and I want to get the number correct, an additional 112,000 people. So it's a big number.
Yes.
Yachting arrivals have actually gone up as well. And even then we know we're not doing a full coverage because sometimes there are boats that escape the recording, you know, system, and that in itself went up by about 17%. The thing about it is that once you start to post records, you see all your numbers move in one particular direction. It just means that the demand for the destination is just strong, and we cover all aspects of it.
The questions are still coming in, and I'm getting some sad complaints about our phone lines as well. I'm very sorry about that. I'm sure it's not to. I don't think that the director of tourism needs any protection really. He's been doing this long enough to respond to any questions or any comments that you may have. So 4527347. We are not ignoring the phone lines. It's just that I've been getting a number of messages via WhatsApp and email that I felt I should share so that we can get a response on. Someone here is saying, I'm still not convinced that we are doing all that we can to tap into the U.S. market. I think we need to find a way to entice St. Lucians who are living abroad to come home. Just imagine there are so many St. Lucians who have not been home in, say, 3, 4, or 5 years. Can't we develop a specific marketing strategy to entice these people to come back to St. Lucia? When they come, they spend because they are here for a short period of time. Never mind, they do not demand the hotel services, but they too are a very vital part of our tourism sector.
Yeah, well, we do advertise and try to encourage solutions to come back. As a matter of fact, the diaspora program has, you know, makes provision for some of those things. I don't think it is fair to say that, you know, we don't go out, don't reach out to them. The easy thing for solutions who are overseas who decide not to come back are not because they're not. It's not
some
because,
cannot come.
Well,
because
that's
the
what's one issue.
documentation and so on.
And there may be a variety of reasons.
But they can sell St. Lucia, so it's
exactly. And it's more beneficial for us if we have them selling St. Lucia and making referrals. And there may be several reasons why they choose not to come, but it's not because of a lack of awareness, you know, and that sort of thing. And you know.
Can we do a little bit more to market our Creole Festival and as well our Flower Festival? I believe the marketing done by the St. Lucia Tourist Board, whereas it is good, it is not tied in sufficiently to our national calendar. We can do more with Carnival, we can do more with Journée Creole, we definitely can do more with La Rose and La Marguerite. It may not sound sexy or attractive, but I believe if we create a sense of awareness with our cultural activities, people will come to discover what St. Lucia really is. We need not sell St. Lucia simply as green, paradise, and beaches, but there are people interested in knowing where we came from, what we eat, how we live, and what makes one St. Lucian.
I will tell you that one of the most exciting things that we can do at a trade show or one of our interactions with traveling audiences is to explain the uniqueness of that rivalry between the flowers. And people find that so fascinating. And I tell you, we do it very often. It's a point of distinction. There's nowhere else on planet Earth where you have that rivalry between flowers that depicts our history and our culture, where in response to some of the trials and tribulations that people have had, they formed their own sub-society and depicted it in the forms of, you know, all the structures, the nurses, doctors, policemen, and that whole monarchy that, you know, let me tell you, this is an absolute point of differentiation. If I want to steal the thunder out of any other competing destination, that is exactly what we put forward. and that creates writings and, you know, attention on the destination. The sad thing about it is that as a public, we don't support it as much as we should.
True.
And there's always a danger when you try to create something that is natural and have it represented as a package for tourism benefit. It should be the other way around. And I think the best support we can give to those flower festivals is to go out and interact and participate, view, and these sort of things.
So that
I
people
think
can get a chance
slowly
to know what
our
exactly
society
it
is
is.
beginning to
Yeah.
accept it and embrace it.
I get excited about it. The music, basically. I'm a lover of music, and if you listen to the songs, boy.
Well, let me give you an example. At the recent Chamber of Commerce Awards, that was 2 or 3 nights ago, I heard a jazz rendition of one of our Lawas songs
Yes.
that was produced by Charles Cadet. And if you had, you have to
Beautiful.
you have to come to the jazz festival
Yeah.
to experience that. That is pure art, or art in its pure essence,
Beautiful.
and that is of our origin. And that's what a jazz festival allows you to do. You know, take something that you've heard in one strain of music, you know, and reproduce it in another environment, and that is classic. And these are
Very, very
the things
beautiful.
that, if you don't come to the shows, you will never get exposed to that, because some of the artists are not recording.
True.
But when they produce those things, you know, it really shows you how strong and how powerful we are in that music genre.
But I tell you, there are some persons who find it offensive. There are some persons who believe that you're not supposed to have any variations of traditional songs. You're not supposed to have any variations. I remember there was this big argument after our independence celebrations, our 36th independence celebrations, where some people felt it was disrespectful to Calypso, for example, to sing what is widely known as a Calypso song in what they consider to be a jazzy manner. So, you know, there is this constant conflict between what we consider to be cultural, you know, versus other genres of music. So I guess it would be an ongoing debate, and it would be left up to the consumer at the end of the day, which one
make a
appeals
decision,
to them,
yeah.
which one appeals to them more. It is extremely late. It is almost 11 p.m. So I think we will bring our program to a close. I see the phone lines are still blinking. I really want to apologize to our viewers who have been trying to call in. I noticed some of you are calling my cell phone, but again, it is not connected to the system, so I would not be able to pick up your calls from there. We apologize that we're not able to take as many of your calls as usual, but I thank those who sent the comments and the questions via WhatsApp, BBM, and also email. Mr. Lewis, I just want to give you an opportunity for your final comments before you close the show, but I must say that the performance last year and this year so far, exciting. And it
Yeah.
says to every single St. Lucian that there is hope. I know many of us are still nervous because of how vulnerable that industry is and how heavily we depend on what is happening overseas. But certainly what we are seeing is encouraging, and it says to us that there are better days basically ahead of us in the tourism sector if we continue to do things the right way.
Absolutely, and the benefits that we are having now is a clear reflection or a response to the strategies that we have implemented. When the new minister came on board, one of the things that he insisted on was that we have a clear strategic plan that will guide us going forward. We've been able to implement that to the T. We've actually looked at best practices and we've implemented them. We've developed programs that are clear in terms of the implementation, that are designed to produce a sort of results. I represent a team of you know, marketing experts and you know, in the business, and you know what we've been able to achieve, you know, with the resources that have been allocated to us, I think has been, you know, tremendous. And I want to give you the assurance that we will continue to do our best to produce, you know, within that same framework going forward.
And I suppose there will be no case for an increase in your allocations this year, given that you're doing so well with you know, less money.
I'll put it this way. The more that I'm given, the better we can do. But having said so, we will still do well.
Indeed. I thank you so much for being my guest. A very interesting conversation, always an opportunity to learn too, because you would realize that the focus of the SLTB is usually outside of St. Lucia, because this is where the market is. And so St. Lucians do not always get a true sense as to what is happening at the SLTB, what the strategies are. We usually hear the reports, and of course if it's bad we hear it faster, and we speak about it as opposed to if it is great. But certainly this is good news, and so I thank you for coming on the program to share with St. Lucians what is happening and what we expect to happen in the months ahead. Again, I thank you for joining us tonight. It's always a pleasure to share with you. We'll be back here next week Monday with another edition of In Touch. Have a blessed and productive week.